We're back. That was a fucking win. Oh my God. Oh, everybody's getting worried. Lose a game to the friggin' Bulls, even though they had probably God knows how many hours of sleep. Got to get on a plane right after dealing with the Kings. Coming off a bunch of losses in a row before that game. Are we going to fall into the play-in? I mean, what can this team do? And then after that first half, I don't know if anybody watching right now was on the Knicks Film School newsletter subscriber halftime Zoom that I do, but I almost felt like I was delivering a eulogy. If this is what this team is, there's not much that they could do in the playoffs because they're just not able to put. What the hell was I thinking? That's a fucking basketball team right there. That is a team that if there was the we back, or the we here season, if there was the we here season that established them as a competent franchise that would make you earn it every time you went out on the floor. And if last year was an announcement of the arrival of like, oh, well, we're a little bit better than competent. This season has been about, this team is Thanos. If you're going to come at us, you better go for the head. You better knock us off. Well, you have a chance, because if you let this team linger, whether it's because they come out and they're just not shooting the ball well, or somebody's having an off night, whatever the case may be, if they just don't, if it's not quite clicking all the way, you better knock them out early. You better, because if you don't, and you let them hang, and you let them hang, and you let them hang, they're just going to keep coming. It doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter if they're on the road in Milwaukee against a team that theoretically should have been pretty desperate for a win tonight. Theoretically should have gone into halftime and was like, we're almost there. We closed that half on an 8-0 run. We calmed the fires. We're up by 11. Let's give it a push now. Let's give it a real push. Let's go up by 15, 17, 19 points, and let's put these fucking guys away. They didn't do it because that's not part of the character of their team. And there aren't many teams in the league nowadays. For as much as there are a lot of very good teams in the league, there are not a lot of teams out there that have that level of character, where if you give them an inch, they will take a mile, not 7 times out of 10, not 9 times out of 10, but 10 times out of 10. That's the Knicks. That's this year's Knicks. And it's top to bottom on the roster. They finally have a roster where every single person who gets time now, at least I can say this about tonight, that gets time is in lockstep with what everybody else is doing. I see you, Bogey. I saw that. Making me look not like a complete idiot 2.5 months or whatever it's been, however many months after the trade, 2 months later. I appreciate that. But it's everybody. And that's what I love about this team is I could sit here and I should have put on his jersey. I'm staring at it. I could sit here and I could wax poetic for the, I don't know, 35th, 45th, 55th time. I've lost count time this season about how Jalen Brunson is as important to his basketball team as any other player in the sport, with the possible exception of the guy who's about to win his 3rd MVP in 4 years. And does that mean I think Jalen Brunson should finish second in MVP voting? No, I don't. Let me be very clear. I have no problem with the guys who are going to finish in the top 4 finishing the top 4. Well, Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and yes, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I know he leaves a little bit to be desired, as we saw in the second half tonight. those four guys, what they are doing and what they're able to do consistently, like they deserve to finish in the top four. That's fine. But what I would like it pointed out for the record, Nikola Jokic gets to play with, I know he's never made an all-star, but he's an all-star player in Jamal Murray. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is on one of the most complete teams, if not the most complete team in the entire sport outside of Boston. Maybe the most complete team in the West in Oklahoma City. And all you have to do is look at what they do sometimes recently when he hasn't been in there and they're still able to come up with big wins. Luka Doncic gets to play with a guy who, what did Kyrie finish tonight with? 48 points, 46 points, scored 24 or 25 or something between the fourth quarter and overtime. Luka Doncic gets to play with that guy. And then, who am I forgetting? Oh, Giannis. Giannis team's traded for a top, emptied the whole kit and caboodle for a top 75 player, still barely hanging on to his prime, but he's right there in Dame Lillard. Jalen Brunson got to play, I guess almost half the year with Julius Randle. He got to play, a couple games in October, November, December, and then January. So, yeah, I guess about half the year, a little bit more than half the year. Since then, when he's been I keep saying it because I feel like people need to understand this, what this guy's doing and how much is being asked of him with the number one usage rate in the fucking National Basketball Association. Continues to be efficient enough and most importantly, lead them to wins. 43 tonight. 43. And you know what? And can I be honest with y'all for a second? When am I not honest with everybody here? I know what did he have at the half? He had 20-something points at the half. And I was asking myself, I'm like, I wonder if they're playing a little bit into the Bucks' hands because Jalen Brunson was doing so much heavy lifting. And I'm not saying like any of the shots he was taking were bad shots. They weren't bad shots because if you're going to cover him one-on-one with mediocre defenders or bad defenders, and you're going to give him shots in the mid-range that he could eat up, like a slice of chocolate cake with a nice cold glass of milk, well, he's going to take those shots, but it still resulted in him taking 18 shots, 23 points on 18 shots. That's not what Jalen Brunson wants to be, nor does he want to be a guy that dishes only one assist. Well, you look up at the end of the game, Jalen Brunson finishes with 43 points on 32 shots and 8 assists, 7 assists in the second half because he found a way, despite how Milwaukee was covering him, to continue to get the other players on the team involved. And that is a mark of a champion. It is the mark of an MVP caliber player. In a different year, I could see Jalen Brunson, the year he's having, finishing second or third without question. That he's going to finish fifth or maybe sixth. That's absolutely no slight on him. He's doing it by himself. When you talk about shot creation, specifically shot creation, and I want to be specific about that because in no way, shape, or form do I want to imply that this is a one-man team because it is not. And that's the other direction that I could go right now, and that I want to go because every night this season where they get a big win, it seems like there are so many heroes, especially in the last 2 months and change, going on almost 2.5 months, where guys come up and have so consistently outplayed the proverbial back of their basketball court, but at the very least outplayed the perceptions of them, that I think there have been enough of those sorts of games and outings where those perceptions have to start to change. And I'm not sure that the perception of any single player on this roster, outside of Brunson, obviously, has changed more than that of Isaiah Hartenstein. And look, I could go a few different directions here because the other guy that would probably have an argument for that is the dude who hit 8 3-pointers in 11 attempts. Hello, Dante DiVincenzo. I gotta go Isaiah Hartenstein first. Why? Because that play that he made in the fourth quarter, where this was absolutely still a game, the score was 106-98. Just a couple of moments earlier, the Bucks had hit 2 back-to-back threes Big threes. Second of which was by Bobby Portis. Actually, sorry. One was the Dame 3 free throws. And then there was the big three by Bobby Portis. Cut that lead to 6. And then you had a bunch of scuffling back and forth with OG missed a couple, and then he stole the ball. Then JB was blocked from behind. And then Portis had an in and out 3. Oh boy, am I happy that 3 didn't go in. And then yeah, shortly after that was that iHeart play where he's I mean, how many times are you going to see a guy that size? A guy that's a guy that size, period, doing that, diving on the floor for a loose ball like that, let alone a guy who was entering a contract year. You know, and I don't want to sit here on a night when there were so many heroes on the court and wax poetic about the coach, but go read if you haven't had a chance already. And I know Fred has a story coming out about this too, but Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype does a great job for Hoops Hype, covering the entire league. Had a great story on Isaiah Hartenstein at the end of this week, in which he got some really wonderful quotes, including some quotes about his coach and how much Tom Thibodeau has meant to Isaiah Hartenstein and how much he feels the coach has been instrumental in his improvement. Like, you want to tell me that these guys aren't fully bought in that a guy who is entering an unrestricted free agency period where he stands to make generational, life-altering wealth is diving on the floor for a loose ball at the end of a regular season game where, like, I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, did the result of this game really matter to the Knicks? No. And you know why? Because if they lost this game, I was going to come on here and I was going to be like, don't worry, the sky is not falling. The Heat lost today. The magic number to avoid the play-in is still 2 games. But that's not how this team thinks. It's not how this team processes things. You heard the quote or saw the quote, I think, earlier today from Jalen Brunson when asked, does he watch the standings? Tom Thibodeau's my head coach. What do you think I do? I mean, they're just out there trying to win every single game that they play, thinking about it like it's the end of the world. That's how they approach things. That's how you come back from 11 down at the half against a team that is supposedly a true blue championship contender. But I got to tell you, from what I saw tonight, I'd like to see how that series would play out. I'm not saying I think the Knicks would win necessarily. Bucks are the more talented team, especially when Chris Middleton is in the game. And no, it is not lost on me for 1 second that Chris Middleton left this game shortly before halftime and did not return. Massive impact in the game. Do they win this game if Middleton plays? We'll see. It's a tough call because, again, the Bucks had spotted them, or they had spotted the Bucks an 11-point lead. The Knicks were a different team in the second half, so maybe they still win the game even if Middleton plays. But that's neither here nor there right now, because you know what? Guess who else ain't all the way healthy? Is these Knicks missing their all-star, their all-NBA level player, and Chris Middleton is not that anymore, to be very clear. So, yeah, this team, man. This fucking team. I mentioned DiVincenzo. I mean, 8 of 11 from 3. I'll check it later. Maybe I forget how many threes Luka had today. Or I actually didn't check how many threes Luka had today. DiVincenzo gunning for that number 2 spot behind Steph Curry for most total threes made in the NBA this season. And to do it, returning to the team that drafted him. And it's like, I imagine being a Bucks. Look, the Bucks their fans got to see a championship a few years ago. So winning a championship means never having to feel bad about anything and never having to say you're sorry. I've never gotten to see one in my life, and I'd love to know what it feels like. So I'm not about to disparage that title or take anything away from Bucks fans, but like, it must be frustrating. It must be frustrating because as it was, you had to deal with, you drafted Malcolm Brogdon in the second round, and then you lost him to, Indiana, which, that didn't work out exactly as Indiana would have liked it. But like, that dude was a huge part of your team, and you lost him because you didn't want to pay him. And like, DiVincenzo now, he has to go in that category because what this guy's doing and how much he just fundamentally changes New York's offense and how he has fundamentally changed New York's offense since entering into the starting lineup, and especially since they lost Julius Randle and OG Anunoby initially. It's just a game changer. So between DiVincenzo and Hartenstein, again, two guys who it's no longer a coincidence. It's no longer these guys are playing above their heads. This is who they are. This is what they are capable of doing. And for the Knicks, that is a godsend because no player in the NBA, no player in the NBA can win games by himself. And Jalen Brunson certainly can't. And he needed both of them tonight. And more than that, he needed everyone. I shouted out Bogey before. You want to talk about some big points? You want to talk about progress? Go look at what Bojan Bogdanovic has now been doing over the last handful of games or so. The shot is coming around. I know he was atrocious, and I killed him for it. I killed him for it after the Bulls game because if he's mediocre in the Bulls game, that result might be different. He made up for it and then some tonight. Those were big shots. Those were big shots he hit in the first half when Jalen Brunson went out. He was 3 for 3 in his minutes to start out in the first half, and that was when the Bucks were rolling. So if Bojan Bogdanovic doesn't go, and then he had 2 free throws. He had essentially 8. I don't know if it was 8 straight, but he had 8 points in the early going in the second quarter without Brunson on the floor. If he doesn't do that, and again, that Bucks team, like they were, this game was on the verge of getting out of hand, if we're being honest with ourselves a few times there. You do not want, I know they have a lot of flaws. You do not want to get down by 16, 17, 18 points to this Bucks team. Because the uphill becomes too steep. So that was big. And then his shots in the fourth quarter, I mean, absolutely massive. Deuce with Pride, only 18 minutes tonight. Again, just massive contributions. 2 out of 4 from deep. His 3 to start the scoring. And you want to talk about a tone setter? Okay, the Knicks are up by 4 at the start of the fourth quarter. Can they hang on? Like, Alan Hahn was being very kind. And I think if you gave him truth serum, because he said in the start of the fourth quarter, and you could tell he kind of like caught, he was like, wasn't sure about if he wanted to actually say what he was going to say. He ended up saying, the Knicks just like, they need to at least hold this 4-point lead. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you don't think that holding it would be sufficient. You're thinking to yourself, man, if they're not down by 4 when Brunson comes back in, then we'll sign for that. And so Deuce hitting that 3 right at the top to start the scoring and to put them up. I think after the Bucks had maybe scored initially. No, it wasn't after. Yeah, it was after the Bucks scored initially. And then he had a beautiful drive a little bit later, and then a steal. Like, big time impact. That's a big time impact from Deuce McBride in only 18 minutes. Speaking of guys who made a big impact and not a lot of time, look, he's not all the way back yet. Benji pointed it out on Twitter. These rebounds that he used to gobble up, he's getting his hands on them. The jumps are there. The timing on the jumps are there. It's the touch maybe is not all the way there for Mitchell Robinson. But this was the biggest step forward. And when he was swatting shots left and right, he finished tonight with 3 blocks, including 2 blocks. I think they were on the same possession, essentially, because I think one went out of bounds, and then the Bucks kept the ball, and he blocked another one. And the block, how nice was that to see? The blocked 3. Blocking Dame Lillard from downtown. You want to talk about a sight for sore eyes? Mitchell Robinson gave it to you there. Precious, interesting enough, did not play in the second half, which I'm not sure I mind too much. I know he was a +5, but didn't necessarily love his time in the first half. And then who am I forgetting? I'll go Hart, and then I'll save my most interesting one for last. Josh Hart, I wrote it down in the first half. Something was wrong with him. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's still is something wrong with him. He hit the 3, which was a great sign. But something he just was like, because he was not only was he avoiding shots, and then he started to take a few shots, and it was the shots that he's usually comfortable with, those little fallaways in the paint, and those didn't even look close. Well, talk about a guy who redeemed himself, and wouldn't you know it, towards the end of the third quarter, the Knicks started playing a little point Hart, with essentially giving Josh Hart the ball at the top of the key and letting him drive the lane and make stuff happen. Once he found DiVincenzo for a three, and then I think the next one he finished himself, and then came his three. Those were big, big minutes for Josh Hart. And then to save this for last. So OG Anunoby, 2 for 10 from the field, right? 0 for 5 from 3 with a couple of misses there. Like I mentioned, he had 2 misses in a row in the middle of the fourth quarter right after the Bucks had cut it to 6. You would not think that a player who goes 2 of 10 from the field and doesn't hit a shot from downtown could have a significantly positive impact. Well, what he did defensively in the second half of this game, he was good in the first half. He was elite in the second half. And just having him out there, I'm very proud of myself that I found this very stupid statistic, but it's a statistic I found, so I'm going to shout out myself. OG Anunoby, let me double check the newsletter here that I just wrote, so I make sure I don't screw it up. OG Anunoby, yes, yesterday or 2 days ago, against the Bulls in the loss, finished with a plus in the plus-minus column, as Clyde would say. That gave him 20 games in a row, going back to when he was still with Toronto, where he was a plus in the plus-minus column. Well, tonight was the 21st straight game with OG Anunoby being a plus in the plus-minus column. That ties him with Chris Bosh, Miami-era Chris Bosh, during the 2012-13 season, for the 7th longest streak of consecutive games being a plus in the plus-minus column in the last 25 years. Here are the names he trails. The aforementioned, actually, Malcolm Brogdon, who did it 29 straight times with the Bucks in 2018-19 season. Ray Allen of the Celtics, Steph Curry, Kevin Garnett, Klay Thompson, and Rafer Alston, of all guys, on that crazy Houston team that won like a million games in a row. So OG Anunoby and Chris Bosh, and he joins that group, breaking a tie with LeBron James, who is now in 9th place. He had 20 straight games with a plus on the plus-minus column. The point is, OG Anunoby helps you win basketball games, and whether he's hitting shots or he's not hitting shots, it's a big deal that he's out there. And as long as he's there, as long as he's healthy, as long as he's good to go, this team, man, again, should have killed us when you had the chance. Should have killed us when you had the chance.